The beast in the wreckage. The sky above the junk moon was dark and full of falling metal. Every hour a new load of trash from orbit came crashing down, shattered ships, broken weapons, and sometimes, worse. Jace Rendar moved carefully between the smoking piles, his boots crunching over glass and ash. He wore a ragged coat and carried a metal pole with a scanner taped to the end. Life here was about finding useful parts before others did. And surviving. Jace had been a soldier once, before the Terran collapse. Now he was just another scavenger on the edge of the galaxy. No one cared if he lived or died. He paused when his scanner beeped. Biosignal, he muttered. That was strange. Most life didn't survive re-entry. And the signal was strong. Large, maybe 600 pounds. He followed the signal over a ridge of twisted engine parts and broken glass panels. What he saw next made him stop cold. In a crater of black soil and crushed metal lay a massive alien creature. It was breathing. Barely. It looked like a lion with scales instead of fur, its body long like a serpent and covered in deep cuts. Glowing blue blood leaked from its wounds. Its head was shaped like a dragon's, with 2 short horns bent backward. One wing was torn. A thick collar, made from dark alien metal, was wrapped around its neck. Strange symbols glowed faintly across it. Jace slowly stepped closer. His scanner confirmed it was alive, but only just. Its breathing was weak. The creature's eyes flicked open. One was swollen shut, but the other fixed on him, bright and intelligent. Jace raised his hand slowly. Easy. I'm not here to hurt you. The beast didn't move. Its chest rose and fell, shaking with each breath. Jace looked at the wounds. Plasma burns. Bullet holes. Someone had tried to kill this thing. Then he saw the tag on the collar. Not just a tracker. A military-grade identification rune. Whatever this creature was, it belonged to someone. Jace felt a cold chill run through him. He could leave it. Walk away now. If someone powerful was hunting it, getting involved would be suicide, but it was dying. Alone. In pain. He sighed. Damn it. Jace dropped his pack and pulled out a medical injector. It was old, but it had basic biogel and nanites. He approached, slowly, watching the creature's eyes. I'm going to help you, he said. The beast didn't resist. When he pressed the injector to its side, it let out a soft, broken sound. Not a growl. Almost a sigh. Jace worked quickly, sealing the worst wounds and wrapping a shredded wing in tape. The creature twitched once, then stilled. Its breathing slowed. The glow in its veins faded slightly, but the bleeding stopped. He sat beside it and wiped his forehead. The ground was hot under him, still radiating from the impact. The creature stared at him. You're welcome, Jace muttered, more to himself than the beast. He stood up. Night was coming, and cold with it. He had to get back to his shelter. He glanced at the beast once more. It wouldn't survive the night out here. Not in that shape. But he couldn't carry it either. You're gonna die, he said softly. Unless you get up. He turned to leave. A soft sound stopped him. He turned, back and saw the beast. Moving. Slowly. Struggling to its feet. Jace blinked in disbelief. It limped after him, one step at a time, dragging its injured wing behind it. You understand me? He asked. The beast didn't answer, of course. But it followed him. The way back to his shelter, a broken shuttle half buried in sand. It crawled inside, curled up near the wall, and let out a tired breath. Jace stared for a long moment, then dropped his pack. Fine. You can stay. But don't eat me. The beast closed its eyes. Above the junk moon, hidden behind a cloud of scrap, a black drone hovered silently. It zoomed in on the shuttle, scanning the heat signatures. It sent data through a secure channel, transmitting across light years to a waiting warship. On the bridge of a massive dreadnought, Baroness Thalzira stood in silence. Her armor shimmered like obsidian. Her eyes narrowed as the image of the beast appeared on her screen. Her voice was cold and sharp as a blade. "Alive," she said. "My bond beast is alive." A general beside her looked confused, but it's bonded to another. The human. Thalzira didn't blink. "Find him. Kill him if you must. But bring my beast back." Far below, Jace had no idea what he had done. He only knew he had saved something. And now, it wouldn't leave his side. The beast marks him. The sun rose weak and red over the junk moon, casting long shadows across broken towers of scrap and rusted wreckage. Inside the shelter, the metal walls groaned as the wind picked up outside, carrying fine grains of metallic sand that scraped like whispers against the hull. Jace Rendar woke before dawn, as he always did, but this time, something was different. He wasn't alone. The air felt heavier, warmer even. He sat up slowly and saw the massive creature curled tightly in the corner of the room, half hidden in shadow. It was still breathing, slow but strong. The gash across its shoulder had closed, more than it should have overnight. The glowing blue blood had hardened like crystal, sealing the wound. That wasn't normal. Nothing healed like that. Jace approached carefully, unsure what to expect. The beast stirred at the sound of his boots, lifting its large head and blinking. Its golden eye, it didn't growl, it didn't even flinch, it just looked at him. And then, to his shock, it leaned forward. He instinctively stepped back, hand reaching for the makeshift knife at his belt. But the beast did not attack. Instead, it stretched its neck forward and gently pressed its forehead against his chest. A pulse surged between them. Jace gasped as a sharp, sudden warmth spread across his skin. Something sizzled where the beast had touched him. He stumbled back and yanked off his coat, pulling open the collar of his shirt, and froze. On the left side of his chest, just above the heart, a strange mark had appeared. It wasn't ink, and it wasn't burned. It glowed faintly, as if written beneath the skin with threads of light. 3 sharp lines formed a triangular shape, surrounded by curling runes he couldn't understand. He reached out to touch it, but there was no pain, only heat, faint and steady, like a heartbeat. "What the hell?" he whispered. The beast sat still, watching him closely. Its wings were still damaged, its body bruised, but something in its gaze had changed. It wasn't just watching him now. It was waiting, as if expecting something. Jace didn't know what to say. He didn't know what this was or why it had happened. All he knew was that he had just been marked by something, ancient and intelligent. Hours passed, but the questions only grew. Jace tried to scan the mark with his gear, but the readings made no sense. Biological, but not human. The scanner kept glitching, reporting foreign data signature and biobond anomaly. He didn't like it. He hadn't asked for any of this. He just tried to help a dying creature, but that choice had changed something. By midday, the beast was on its feet. It moved slowly, but with purpose. When Jace opened the door to go out and scavenge, it followed him without hesitation. Through piles of ship debris, across dunes of broken metal, the beast stayed close. It didn't growl at the strange noises or shy from the sharp winds. It walked beside him, silent and calm, like a shadow that had chosen its source. Other scavengers noticed. By the 3rd hour, rumors had spread through the junk colonies. Some whispered that Jace had brought a demon from the stars. Others said he had tamed one of the ancient guardian beasts from Zareen legend. Still more claimed he was cursed, and that the glowing mark was a death sign. Jace didn't care about the whispers, but he did start to worry when the armed men came. They arrived at nightfall, 3 of them riding old skimmers with laser rifles slung over their backs. They didn't knock. They just burst into his shelter, weapons raised. "Out," the leader said. "Now." Jace stepped forward, hands raised. "I don't want trouble." "Too late," the man sneered. "You've got something valuable and we want it." Behind him, the beast stirred. The men barely had time to aim before it moved, A flash of light exploded from its chest. Energy rippled across the room as the beast roared, not in rage, but power. The sound cracked the walls. One of the men screamed as his rifle melted in his hands. Another tried to run but was flung back by an invisible force. The third, frozen in place, dropped to his knees, shaking. Jace stood in the center of it all, eyes wide. The mark on his chest burned brightly, pulsing in sync with the beast's energy. It wasn't random. It was connected. Linked. When the light faded, the three attackers lay unconscious. Nothing in the shelter was broken, nothing except the silence that followed. The beast turned its head to Jace and slowly lowered itself to the floor. Jace knelt beside it, heart still racing. "What are you?" he whispered. He didn't get an answer, but deep inside he felt something stir. A voice, not heard with ears, but with the mind. A whisper that wasn't words, but emotion, chosen. That night, as he sat by the fire, watching the beast sleep, Jace knew something was coming. He didn't know when or how, but the mark, the bond. It wasn't just a connection. It was a beacon, and someone, somewhere, was following it. The Baroness hunts. The stars shifted overhead like quiet watchers, cold and unblinking. Far beyond the broken moons and rust-choked planets, a vessel unlike any other cut across the darkness. It moved without sound, without trail, and without mercy. The Vortex Fang, a dreadnought of the Tsarine Empire, was as much a weapon as it was a throne. Black armor ran along its body like plated obsidian, and the forward deck shimmered with electric sigils, pulsing in rhythm with the will of its master. At its heart stood Baroness Thalzira, and she was furious. Her eyes, a burning mix of violet and silver, locked onto the rotating hologram of a beast. The very one she'd grown from blood and bone, the one forged in her personal war laboratories, the one bound to her by right and heritage. Kor was not just a pet. He was her enforcer, her protector, her legacy. And now, he was tainted. "Bond breach confirmed," the officer said beside her, voice careful and stiff. "The genetic link with the creature has weakened. A new signal has taken root. It comes from a human." The Baroness turned slowly. Her armor hissed as it shifted with her body, plates folding and expanding like some living metal. She moved with control, but it was clear. Beneath her cold stare, a fire was building. "A human," she said, more to herself than to the officer. "That beast is bound to me. My blood. My command. How could a feral mongrel of earth soil disrupt a sacred tether?" The officer swallowed hard. The creature may have entered a weakened state during its fall. The right may have been vulnerable. Thalzira raised one finger. A quiet gesture, but it made the officer freeze. "I did not ask for excuses." She turned back to the hologram and watched as it zoomed in on the human face beside the beast. Rough beard, cold eyes, a fighter's stance. The man didn't look like a fool. No, he looked like someone who had seen death and walked away from it more than once. "Jace Rendar," she said aloud, reading the name blinking beside his face. "Ex-soldier, Terran infantry, discharged after the collapse." She narrowed her eyes. How poetic. One ruin finds another. In the corner of the room, two armored warriors knelt. Their bodies were twice the size of humans, forged in battle and altered for loyalty. They did not speak unless spoken to. Thalzira's voice broke the silence like thunder. "Ready the reapers. I want that moon scoured. Leave nothing standing. But the man, if the beast refuses to return willingly..." She paused, voice cold and flat. "Cut it open and bring me the core." The warriors rose and bowed deeply before marching out. On the edge of the galaxy, death was moving with purpose. Down below, Jace Rendar felt none of that. But he felt the pressure, subtle and constant. It was in the wind, in the quiet, in the Eyes of scavengers who now stepped away when he entered a market square. They weren't afraid of him. They were afraid of it, the beast at his side. Core, as Jace had come to call him, no longer limped. The wounds were almost gone, sealed with unnatural speed. His body looked stronger now, like the very air of the junk moon had fed him somehow. Yet even as he walked tall and silent, there was a tension in his movements, a heaviness behind his glowing gaze. Something was coming. Jace could feel it too. He tried to keep to himself, bartering for food, gathering spare coils and oxygen filters, but he couldn't ignore the stares. People whispered, turned their backs. A merchant tried to chase him away with a plasma torch until Core growled once, deep and low. The torch melted in the man's hand. He ran. Back in the shelter, Jace finally spoke his fear. "I think they're tracking you," he said, standing beside the fire. "Or maybe me now, ever since you marked me." Core looked at him. No words came, only silence. But in Jace's head, that faint pressure returned. A wordless feeling. Regret. Warning. He clenched his fists. "Who did this to you?" The beast didn't answer, not directly. But that night, while Jace slept, he dreamed of fire. He stood on a battlefield of stars, watching warships collide and break in silence. He saw a black figure standing tall in a throne of bones, hand outstretched toward a kneeling beast. A voice echoed through the dream, not in sound but in meaning. "Return to me. You are mine." He woke in a sweat, the mark on his chest glowing, faintly in the dark. In orbit above the moon, the Vortex Fang deployed its first wave. They were called the Reapers, not soldiers, not machines. Something in between. Silent. Fast. Programmed to hunt anything that bore the Baroness's genetic signature. They landed on the outer ring of the junk colonies, moving through the ruins like shadows. One scanned the air, another sniffed the wind. Then, they turned. Jace's signal had been found. Flight and fire. The morning came with no sun, only a dim haze that smeared the sky like a bruise. Metallic clouds hovered low over the junk moon, and the wind carried a strange scent. Not just ash or rust, but something deeper. Ozone, burnt circuitry, blood. Jace Rendar woke with a jolt, every nerve in his body screaming a silent warning. Something was wrong. He grabbed his pulse blade from under the cot, then turned toward the far end of the shelter. Core was already standing, ears flicked forward, wings half extended despite the injury. His claws scratched softly against the metal floor. They both heard it. A whine, high-pitched, barely audible but unmistakable. Drones. Jace bolted toward the reinforced hatch, yanked open a side panel, and activated the motion scanner he'd built. From scrap, the screen lit up in red. 8 incoming, fast. Not ships, not people. Something in between. "Core," Jace whispered, gripping the edge of the screen. "They're here for you." The beast looked at him and gave no sound. But his eyes, those burning, intelligent eyes, narrowed with a kind of knowing sadness. As if he'd always expected this moment to come. Outside, the ground began to tremble. Not with footsteps, but with directed thrust, controlled landings. The Reapers were touching down. These were not living soldiers. Not truly. They were biomechanical assassins, each grown in the cloning tanks of the Baroness's private chambers. Bone plated in steel, eyes replaced by targeting arrays, nerves rewired to feel no fear. They hunted by scent, by sound, and by blood memory. Core's memory. Jace ran to the side chamber and tore open a weapons crate he hadn't used in years. Inside were the last remnants of his past life. A rusted plasma rifle, 3 battery clips, and a folding explosive charge meant for breaching bulkheads. He stuffed it all into his satchel, heart pounding. "We can't fight them head on," he muttered. "Not all of them. We run." Core growled softly, a low rumble that shook the floor. "I'm serious," Jace snapped. "This isn't your old war. We're not on some throne world. We're in a dump heap. If we stay, we die." But even as he said it, fire bloomed in the sky. A sudden explosion rocked the nearby ridge. A beam of violet light sliced through an old comms tower, turning it to molten slag. Screams followed. Somewhere, a family in the junk colony had been vaporized before they even knew they were under attack. Jace didn't wait. He shoved open the side hatch and ducked low, motioning for Core to follow. They sprinted into the junk field, weaving between towers of discarded satellites and piles of shattered hull plating. The sky above pulsed with heat signatures. Drones buzzed like angry hornets, scanning every crack, every crevice. The Reapers dropped down with no sound, six-legged spider-like things with human arms, human torsos, and blank white faces. They walked upright when it pleased them, but they were faster on all six. One of them turned its head toward Jace mid-run. Its face split open to reveal a nest of thin, twitching wires. It shrieked and gave chase. Jace shoved an old coolant canister into Core's hands, pause, whatever, and rolled behind a broken engine core. Throw it now. Core hurled it like a boulder. Jace shot it midair. The explosion ripped through the junk pile, sending molten metal and shrapnel flying in all directions. One of the Reapers was caught in the blast. It didn't scream. It didn't flail. It just disintegrated, silent and fast, like it had never been there at all. But two more leapt from above. Core caught one midair and slammed it into the ground with enough force to crack stone. Jace shot the second in the eye. The shot only slowed it. He tackled it instead, jamming his pulse blade into the base of its neck where flesh met machine. Sparks flew. It died, twitching. They ran again. By nightfall, the sky burned orange. The entire southern quarter of the junk colony was ablaze. Smoke rose in columns, glowing embers falling like poisoned snow. Jace and Core reached the edge of the forbidden zone, an area marked by alien ruins and strange, humming stones. No one went there, not even the other scavengers. Inside, Jace said, panting, knees shaking. It's our only shot. Core hesitated. His eyes scanned the symbols carved into the stone arches. They glowed faintly as he approached, recognizing him, accepting him. Jace saw it too. Whatever this place was, it wasn't just ancient. It was calling him. No, not him. Them. They stepped inside the ruins as the Reapers closed in behind them, but once Jace and Core crossed the boundary, the machine stopped. They howled, screeched, but they would not cross the line. Behind them, in the smoke, a black-cloaked figure stepped down from a low-hovering ship. Her eyes burned with fury. Her armor reflected the firelight like polished obsidian. The Baroness had arrived, and she would not be denied. The heart of the beast. The wind stopped the moment they crossed the threshold. Jace noticed it first. The air inside the ancient ruins was still, thick like syrup, humming faintly beneath the surface. The sound was not a noise, not something heard with ears. It was a pressure in the chest, a quiet thrum behind the eyes. The stone arches rose around them, massive and weathered, carved with symbols that pulsed faintly with inner light. The ground was smooth beneath the dust, unmarred by the junk piles outside. Whatever civilization had built this place, it hadn't used tools. These walls felt grown, not constructed. Jace turned to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. Core stood still in the center of the circle, eyes glowing bright gold, wings tucked close to his sides. But something about him had changed. His chest was rising and falling faster, the mark on his body, once hidden under fur and scale, now blazing like a living tattoo. It mirrored the same triangular sigil that Jace bore on his own skin. Beast looked around, then walked toward the center altar, if altar was even the right word. It was a raised platform surrounded by spires, and on it floated a single dark crystal, spinning slowly in the air without strings or supports. Jace stepped forward cautiously. What is this place? As if in answer, the crystal lit up. A sudden wave of light burst outward, not blinding but heavy, like memory turned physical. Images flashed in the air, not holograms, not projections. Memories. He saw a younger version of the beast, Core, but smaller, leaner, standing beside a tall, armored woman with cruel eyes and hair like dark flame. Baroness Thalzira. She touched the beast's forehead and the mark was burned into him. It was not a gift. It was a brand. The next image showed Kor in battle, ripping through machines, flame pouring from his mouth, eyes blank and cold. Every time he roared, a wave of destruction followed. He was not a soldier. He was a weapon. Jace stumbled back, breath catching in his chest. He looked at Kor, now silent, now still, and for a flicker of a moment he saw it. The beast's pain. Not physical. Something deeper. Something no amount of healing could fix. And then came the final image. A dark chamber, bathed in blood-red light. Thalzira stood before a council of nobles arguing. One of them asked a question. What happens if your creature bonds to another? Thalzira's voice had been filled with pride and fear. Then the right collapses. The beast becomes free, but the human would not survive it. Not for long. The memory ended. The air in the room cooled. The crystal dimmed. Kor looked at Jace, eyes full of something that wasn't just thought, but sorrow. You didn't choose this, Jace whispered. You were never supposed to. Kor lowered his head. Jace sat on the edge of the platform, mind racing. So much made sense now. The dreams, the visions, the pain in his chest when the mark glowed. He hadn't just saved a creature. He had taken on the weight of its curse. This bond wasn't a friendship. It was something older, written in blood and command. Kor had belonged to Thalzira by birth and by ritual. That connection had been ripped away and replaced with something fragile and dangerous. Him, and if what the memory showed was true, the link would eventually burn through his mind like acid. He wasn't built for it. No human was. Then why? He asked aloud. Why would Kor choose him? Why not let the bond die with silence? As if hearing him, Kor stepped closer. For the first time, the beast bowed, not as a servant but as an equal. A soft pressure touched Jace's thoughts, and then came the voice, not spoken but present, ancient, deep. You were kind. You did not take. You gave. Jace felt his chest tighten, not with fear but with something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The silence was broken by a low rumble in the distance. He stood up, blinking toward the ruin's outer edge. Beyond the stones, beyond the force line that protected this sacred ground, shadows gathered, drones, machines, and a black-cloaked figure walking calmly between them. The Baroness had arrived. She stood at the edge of the barrier, her gaze locked on the ruins, her arms behind her back. When her eyes found Jace, she tilted her head. The expression on her face was not rage, not yet. It was disbelief. You, she said softly, voice carried by unseen tech. They told me you were a scavenger, that you found my beast by accident. But I see now, the beast found you. Jace stood tall, weaponless, exhausted but unmoving. You tortured him, he said. You used him like a gun. No wonder he ran. Thalzira's smile was sharp. He didn't run, she replied. He was stolen. The bond you carry is not yours. You can't handle it. It will kill you. Then why haven't I died yet? She stepped forward, the barrier shimmering as her boot crossed the invisible line. But the light snapped against her armor, pushing her back. She growled. I cannot enter, she said. Not yet. But you will leave. And when you do, I will peel the beast from your corpse. Behind her, the reapers stirred. Kor stepped beside Jace. The ruins trembled with ancient power. The past was done, but the war had only just begun. The Baroness bleeds. There are moments in history that don't announce themselves with horns or banners. They begin with silence, a stillness so thick it presses on the skin like unseen gravity. And in that silence, choices are made that ripple across stars. Jace stood at the threshold of such a moment. The alien ruins behind him pulsed gently, a soft blue light dancing through the carved stones like breath. Beside him, the beast, Kor, stood, like a sentinel of living myth, wings half-folded, muscles taut with ancient instinct, And across the invisible force line that marked the end of the sanctuary, the Baroness waited. Thalzira, armored in midnight black and cloaked in a mantle woven from the hides of conquered beasts, studied the human and her former bond creature with cool contempt. Her soldiers, reapers, drones, genetic horrors lined up behind her like shadows waiting to be loosed. "Do you think this place protects you forever, human?" Her voice rang out, carried not by her lungs but through some projection woven into her armor. "Even the oldest shrines fall. Even gods bleed." Jace didn't respond right away. He watched her, heart hammering. He had no plan, no army, no secret weapon. All he had was what had grown between him and the beast, something deep, something wordless, something the Baroness had never understood. Kor stepped forward, eyes locked on his former master. The barrier shimmered and bent, reacting to the intensity between them. And for the first time, Thalzira hesitated. She wasn't used to being stared down by her own creation. Jace took a breath. "Then let's settle this," he said. "No more running, no more soldiers, just us." Thalzira blinked, her head tilted, curious. "You challenge me?" "I challenge the right of bond," he said. Those words hung in the air like thunder. The soldiers behind her shifted. A few reapers buzzed uncertainly. Even the air seemed to pull back. The right of bond was sacred, older than the Tsarine Empire itself. To invoke it was to place one's soul in the hands of the bond creature, to let fate decide which bond held. True. Only 3 outcomes were possible. The challenger dies, consumed by the bond. The creature returns to the original master, or the bond holds, and the creature chooses. Thalzira laughed, not out of joy, but out of shock. "You would risk that?" she sneered. "You don't even know what you carry." "I don't have to," Jace said, stepping into the open. "He does." Kor followed him, slow and steady, his wings now aglow with radiant light. The mark on Jace's chest burned with energy, the same triangular rune that had first appeared when he healed the dying beast. Now it throbbed like a second heartbeat. The barrier parted. The rite had begun. The arena formed around them, summoned by ancient codes buried in the shrine. The ground flattened, the spires retracted, and lines of light rose in the air like a cage woven from starlight. It was neither battlefield nor temple. It was a place between worlds, made only for truth. Jace stood on one side. Thalzira strode to the other, shedding her cloak. Her armor realigned around her body, revealing long, bladed limbs and combat spikes from her gauntlets. She was built for war. He was built for endurance. They were not equal. But the right didn't care for fairness. A blast of sound burst from the circle. The trial had begun. Thalzira moved like lightning. She struck first, a blade slicing through the air where Jace's head had been a second earlier. He ducked and rolled, pain shooting through his shoulder. She came again, this time kicking him hard in the ribs, sending him skidding across the stone. Kor didn't move. That was the rule. The bond creature did not interfere. Not yet. It watched. Judged. Thalzira loomed over Jace, blade raised. "You're weak," she spat. "You don't even understand what this thing is." "I don't have to understand it," he gasped, wiping blood from his mouth. "I earned it." He shoved a shock mine from his belt onto her leg. It exploded with a sharp crack, making her stumble. He lunged, jabbing with a plasma dagger, but she caught his arm and twisted it until bones cracked. She raised her blade again. But this time, Kor growled. Loud. Low. Final. Both of them froze. Kor stepped forward, slow and deliberate, his body glowing, with radiant energy. The mark on Jace's chest burst into flame, not real fire, but a blaze of pure energy, white and blue and searing. Thalzira screamed. Her blade dropped. "Kor," she whispered. "No." But Kor was no longer hers. His form shifted as he stepped into the circle, growing larger, almost regal. His wings spread wide, golden light pouring from his chest. The ancient language of the bond appeared in the air, each symbol burning into reality as the decision was made. The circle pulsed. The bond had chosen. Jace. Not her, not command, not blood, but choice. Thalzira collapsed to her knees. Blood leaked from her nose and ears as the bond ripped away from her spirit. The severing was not gentle. It never was. You stole him from me, she rasped. No, Jace said quietly, kneeling beside her. You lost him the moment you made him a slave. Kor lowered his head beside Jace's shoulder. The bond shimmered. The Baroness lay broken, her armor dimming, her body trembling. But Jace stood tall. In the galaxy's oldest rite, the bond creature had defied the bloodline and chosen humanity. The chosen and the free, there was no trumpet, no thunder, no dramatic skyfall, just silence. After all the fire and blood, after the screams and the clash of blades, the battlefield was quiet now, eerily quiet, as if the stars themselves had paused to witness the end of something ancient and cruel. Jace stood in the center of the glowing arena, breath ragged, every bone in his body aching. His left arm hung useless at his side, fractured from the battle, but he hardly noticed. His heart was steady. The mark on his chest, the strange symbol that had burned and bled since that first day, now pulsed gently with warmth, no longer painful, no longer strange. Beside him stood Kor, tall and still, his wings folded behind him, his eyes burning not with rage but calm. There was something new in his posture now, not tension, not duty, peace. Across the ring, the once feared Baroness, Thalzira, lay slumped on one knee, her armor fractured, her breath shallow. Her face, always so sharp and sculpted in pride, had crumpled into disbelief. Her hands trembled, not from fear, from the weight of loss. She had built her empire on the power of control, on obedience, on bloodline. And now, all of it was undone by the one thing she never valued: choice. Jace didn't speak to her. There was nothing left to say. The ritual flame around the arena flickered and died. The circle of ancient light vanished into dust, returning to the stone. The rite of bond was over. The choice had been made. The ground beneath Jace shifted as the temple itself seemed to breathe. Lights from the carvings faded. Walls retracted. The force line that had protected them dissolved, and with that the Reapers outside stirred. But they didn't charge. They didn't move. They simply waited. Kor stepped forward, leaving Jace's side for just a moment. He faced the drones, those living weapons once bound to the Baroness's bloodline. A deep, harmonic growl resonated from his chest. Not a threat, but a command carried on frequencies only they understood. One by one, the Reapers powered down. They collapsed like puppets with cut strings, folding into the earth, their purpose gone, freed not by war but by will. Jace turned and looked up at Kor, then beyond him toward the stars above. Somewhere out there, people would hear of what happened here. And when they did, the story would spread. Not of battle or bloodshed, but of something far rarer, a beast that had chosen a man. Weeks later, the galaxy stirred. On neutral worlds, rebels whispered of the Baroness's defeat like a tale from scripture. On fringe planets, enslaved species raised their heads for the first time in generations. The Zarine nobility denied it at first. They called it a trick, a lie, human propaganda, but the images could not be hidden. The footage, leaked by a drone whose memory core had been hijacked during the battle, spread across systems. Jace Rendar, standing alone in the shrine ruins, a glowing alien beast behind him, the mark of the bond shining from his chest. The Baroness collapsed and bleeding, and the beast, bowing. The Council of Outer Species, a fractured alliance of planets too afraid to unite, finally convened in one place for the first time in over a century. The chamber was filled with beings of all shapes and tongues, some aquatic, some insectoid, some bound by light or thought alone. They waited in silence as the doors opened. Jace entered, no armor, no weapons, just his old scavenger's coat and the mark on his chest still glowing faintly. Behind him, Kor stepped in, regal and massive, wings folded like a living banner of peace. A representative from the Tselari spoke first. "Why have you come, human?" Jace didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I didn't come to lead," he said. "I came because it's time we stop letting fear decide who deserves to be free." He glanced at Kor. "I didn't earn this bond through war. I earned it by doing what none of them ever did. I listened, I helped, and I let him choose." Silence again. Then the oldest among them, a floating crystalline entity from the Doma cluster, said softly, "And he chose you." Jace nodded. "No more kings, no more collars, no more beasts used like blades. Let this bond be a symbol, not of power, of respect." Outside the chamber, thousands waited. On screens across galaxies, billions watched. And when the council stepped forward and bowed, not to Jace but to both of them, the galaxy shifted, not with war, but with hope. Later that night, beneath a quiet sky on a world free of metal rain and burning towers, Jace sat by a small campfire. Kor lay nearby, massive body curled around the edge of the clearing like a living shield. They didn't speak. They didn't need to, and for the first time in years, Jace closed his eyes and slept without keeping a weapon within reach. Because he knew. He was no longer alone. And he had not just saved a beast. He had given a soul back its freedom. And in return, the galaxy had found a new kind of legend.